Hey there! Welcome to season 2 of Raise the Brow with Nishka and Malaika. This season, we have lined up stories of some kick ass Indians from across the globe who are reshaping our Indian society by being who they are. Because, log kya bolenge. So, we hope you enjoy this episode as much as we have enjoyed putting it together.
Okay, so today we have Dr. Tanaya with us, who talks about sexual health on Instagram. That's how we discovered her because we love her highlights. We love how she normalizes any and every conversation when it comes to sex, masturbation, body parts, everything. So we all love you. Just saying that. Okay, and today we are here to talk about masturbation. Now, the history of masturbation in India, as we know, has been quite taboo, continues to be. And of course, there's not much we can do about it. We couldn't have done about it, but today we really can. And so, this conversation is all about being very, very masturbation positive and that it's absolutely okay to love how it feels. Yeah.
Yay! I'm so happy to hear this positive approach to masturbation as opposed to everything else that I have been receiving over the past 1 week.
Really?
Yeah, I just put a reel on masturbation and people are angry with me. Let's put it that way.
I saw that reel.
Yeah, we
What?
did.
There's a lot of mansplaining happening in the
Uh,
comments and a lot of you are
of course.
against our culture and you don't know what Ayurveda is. Yeah, that.
Yeah. Of course, you are
We're
against
gonna
our
get to
culture.
that.
Yes. Yeah. And the best is this is not even our culture. This is something that has been passed on from the colonization era where they were all like, oh, it's wrong to touch yourself. For women, of course. Men can do anything.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
No, wait. I
Yeah.
have. This is even better because the semen retention concept and the no fap concept actually comes from China. So boycott China. I wonder where this is going to go.
So, Dr. Tanaya, tell us how you got into the line of work that you are in.
Um, I come from a very sex positive household. Both of my parents are fertility specialists. So, dinner table conversation used to be that uski semen analysis अच्छी नहीं आई है. This person's sperm is not running as fast as it should. This was dinner time conversation. So it's always been a very normal thing for me. And growing up, I realized that this is not how other households are. I went to a dinner party. I was 6. It was not a dinner party. I went to a birthday party, and somebody asked me why I'm late, and I said because my mother was gone and operated on somebody's uterus, and I was kicked out of that party. And this is just how my childhood was. So somewhere along the line, growing up, I became the go-to person that people used to come to. That okay, this has happened. What happens now? Because my mother's a gynecologist as well. So lots of pregnancy scares, everybody coming and asking me, okay, I missed my period, what do I do now? Eventually, when I moved to the UK for my masters, I realized this is happening there as well. Nobody knows anything about sex, not in India, not in the UK, not in the world. And most of the sex educators that are out there are not from a medical background, and we need somebody to talk about that. So I was born. Yeah, essentially that's how it happened, and slowly it evolved. I initially started out as a myth busting place, but eventually it moved on into education, and now it's just become a thing of its own, and it's fun. So can't quite define it.
No, I think it's absolutely amazing. I think this is what the good side of the internet is,
Yes.
where you get to see so much, and you're like, and what is even more special is that you have an Indian doctor talk about it. That is what is amazing. Because there is enough that you hear from the West and everywhere else, but the context is so different when you have somebody who looks like you and is from where you are talk about something like that, and you're like, wait a minute, she's normalizing something that we never speak about. So it's amazing.
Thank you so much. And a lot of times that I sort of get confused about is that the sex health doctors or the sexologists we've seen are, sexologists, and they're generally male, no ounce of sex positivity, very rooted in not evidence-based medicine. So I felt like there was a need for all of these things to be there, and yeah, serendipity essentially.
Yeah, you were just there at the crossroads and you were like, it's me. I'm going to talk about it. Yeah, nice. So let's talk about, well, masturbation. Um, I remember when we were discussing this topic, Malaka and I and our person who does story research, Iram, we were discussing our own stories of discovering masturbation and how in high school and in when we were much younger than high school also, how it was like such a hush hush thing that only boys spoke about very openly, but the girls were always talking about like romance novels and secret erotica novels exchanges were happening. There was never this, we used to talk about like sex like exactly in that way, and talk about masturbation exactly in that way. It was never like, what, oh, I tried this and this is what happened. And at least for me, the first time I discovered that I could do that to myself, pleasure myself essentially, I was 14. I don't know if that is very young or if that's very old. And I
Average age.
remember average age. Okay, see, it's good to know from an expert where you are. And I remember talking to my then best friend about it, and then we were like oohing and eyeing, and it was something so magical because we discovered erotica, and we were like, oh shit, this is amazing, and we accidentally discovered it. That's the best part. We got books from the library, and we are like, hey, this is very interesting. What is happening in this
Wow.
book? And yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it happened. And I remember the first time we actually saw a masturbation porno was even more bizarre because do you guys remember LimeWire? It
Yes.
used
Yes.
to do this, yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember how on LimeWire you could see what other people have downloaded in your
Yes.
network? So she and I were, on LimeWire downloading something else, and then we saw, and we know who the person was, and we saw their saw their downloads, and this person was much older, and well, in that situation we were 14, so he was an adult, so he was like married and everything else, and we were like, oh, we know this uncle. we saw we saw all of his downloads, and that's how we discovered our first
Yeah.
masturbation porno.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, and to this date it continues to be unrealistic in every way.
Can
I'll
you
never
look
forget
into
that.
the face again without immediately thinking
Yes,
about it?
yes, you
Yeah.
cannot. I still cannot. I cannot.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so
god.
that was my brush into masturbation. What were your individual stories? Dr. Tanaya, you can go first, and then Malaka, you can
Yeah.
add to that.
I don't remember when I discovered it first, but I know it was in high school, and I went and told everybody about it because I was the person who everybody used to ask, right? The famous story about this is that so when I was in grade 7 or 8, my parents gave me a DVD, and that explained the basic concepts. Okay, this is what happens in sex. This is what an orgasm is. This is what bodies are. You should know all of this. You're old enough now, and watch this. I was like, cool. So I had a basic idea about what sex and stuff is, but I didn't. Now my dog wants to come inside. Anyway, I had a basic idea of what was happening, but I didn't know too much. And then at some point, somebody was asking me what happens, and I was like, so this is in Hindi, and this is a story that goes around in my friend circle still. That I said, वो penis जो है वो लकड़ी की तरह हो जाता है, फिर उसमें से दही निकलता है.
No.
That is, I'm never going to
Oh
forget that.
my god.
13 years later, I still hear that story from my friends that this is what um, this is what
Yeah.
their sex was
Okay.
like. So I knew
Yeah.
कहीं से तो दही निकलता है, but why it happens, what happens, I don't know. And at some point, I figured it out, and there were conversations, saw some, some reading material, a lot of. I used to read a lot of historical romance, and that's when I finally understood there's something called a clitoris, and I think it was all. There's no distinct, that moment simply because it's been so normal in my household. I mean, we don't always talk about sex, but saying the word vagina is not weird in my household.
Right. Right.
How about you?
Yeah. Um, I okay, this is gonna sound so lame after these two stories, but I largely grew up around four boys. So I didn't even realize the idea of it till I was in the 12th grade. And yeah, exactly. And one of my friends was talking to me about it, and I was just like, what? That happens? And she was like, well, I think you're 17. Like, the rest of us have been doing this for the last 4 years. And I was like, oh, and you have to understand at the time I was with a boy for about 2.5 years already. So it's not like I hadn't done things. I just didn't perceive for the life of me that I could do it for myself. And then I was like, oh, so yeah, as embarrassing as this is, and it's very difficult to explain this to future partners as well, because you talk about it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I discovered this when I was in first year of college, and they're like, what? Like when you were 18? So yeah, that took some time. So yeah, to go against what the stories you guys have said, I actually, for no real reason, I have nothing against it. And I've told my sister this, I've told Nishka this couple of times. I have not watched porn till date. I have nothing against it. I've had partners who watch it, and I'm like, yeah, sure, by all means, like, go ahead. I mean, I have you. I don't need to watch porn. We're good. And similarly, even with masturbation, this is so embarrassing to admit to the whole wild world on the internet, but I don't Nishka this, and I keep telling my partners this. I'm like, yeah, I mean, by the time I figured it out, I had been with, like, a partner, and progressively after that, I've been with, men or women, and I've just not done it. I've done it about 3, 4 times in my life to kind of see what it is like. Yeah, okay. You know
Yeah.
what? Cue the expressions, guys.
I'm sorry, Malaika. An expert just made a face.
That's what I said. Cue the
I thought I
expressions.
had a story to make you feel better, but the last time killed me, and I don't think my story is going to make you feel better in any way.
So yeah, okay. So I've dug my grave. I might as well cover
Yeah.
myself in as well. It's been about, I think, in my life I've done it maybe about 5, 6 times. 5, 6 times have been great. Nothing against those 5, 6 times. They've been beautiful. I think they've been better than some of the guys or girls I've been with, all said and done. But yeah.
So, Dr. Tanya, as an expert, is there a right way to pleasure yourself? Is there such a thing? Is there a right way?
That's a very loaded question. I think the right way is different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I am slightly more partial to the idea that all orgasms are clitoral orgasms. So, I'm gonna go on a 2-minute rant here, so bear with me.
Awesome.
Everywhere else we've seen or read, media, books, anything, there's a lot of emphasis on having an orgasm while being penetrated. That doesn't happen for nearly 80% of vulva owners and clitoris owners. That's a massive number. That's very disproportionate, and that is the main representation of an orgasm that we've had in a vulva owner or a woman everywhere so far. For even a show as progressive as Sex and the City, this is what we've seen. Being penetrated and suddenly, orgasm, toes girl. That's not how it happens for 80% women, and it's funny because one of the most sort of aggressive proponents of this theory was this dude called Sigmund Freud, which a lot of people would know. Freud had said that there are two kinds of orgasms. The first is, I'm going to use slightly cisnormative language. Women have two kinds of orgasms. The first is a vaginal orgasm, which is for more mature women. who are sexually experienced, and for immature women there is a clitoral orgasm. Now the fun bit is that if you are a mature and sexually experienced woman, you're going to be slut shamed, so you can't win. And if you have a clitoral orgasm, you're sexually immature, so you can't win there either. So, the inherent misogyny is very apparent. But this is a dude who doesn't even have a clitoris coming and telling us what a clitoris, what an orgasm is supposed to feel like. And this has been one of the biggest pushes towards the idea that penetrative orgasm is going to get you there. So for most people who do assume from pornography, TV, media, whatever the fuck, I can cuss, right?
Yes.
Wherever we've been led to believe that penetration or fingering yourself is going to bring you to an orgasm, and that's why most people go wrong, because for 80% people it's direct stimulation of the clitoris that helps. So rant over.
Yeah, I totally relate to that when you were talking about it. This explains many of my orgasms. Now, do you, as a doctor, do you recommend to women who are coming to you and your patients or people who are just intrigued, do you recommend to them that yes, you should masturbate without them asking you? Like, is there something that you advise as a doctor?
So it depends. If somebody is having trouble conceiving, this can help, for the vagina owning partner to masturbate, because what happens in an orgasm is that the pelvic muscles like clench repeatedly like this, and because of them clenching repeatedly, gonna get slightly technical. Your vagina is tilted backwards, so it's like if you're lying flat on the bed, it's tilted towards your bum. It's not straight like this. So, and the uterus is like this. It's at an angle, so they basically make a V shape. So when the orgasm is happening and the semen is collected over here in the vagina, the uterus repeatedly dips into it. So it's like dipping your chips into dip. The more you dip it, the more likely you're going to get more dip on your chip. And it can help there, but other than that, it's a personal choice. If you want to, go ahead, do it. If you don't want to, don't do it. But there should be no pressure on it for anybody. Malaika, I'm talking to you. Sorry, that was a cheap shot. I'm sorry.
This is a safe space to take cheap shots. Don't worry, it's what we do.
Is it? Who is that safe for?
So let's talk about toys and aids, which can aid in the self-pleasuring process. So when we were researching for this story and this conversation, we read so much online, very India focused and very like global Indian focused on masturbation habits of women. What are they asking? What are they talking about? And there was at the same time a lot out there, but also not much out there. Nothing very conclusive. Nothing very like, oh wow, statistics, numbers, like actual research, and especially in today's time. But what we did stumble upon was this very interesting paper. It was a research paper which was done in 2017 or 2018, if I'm not wrong, by this very popular blog, which I heard about for the first time. But I had a bunch of friends who were like, "Oh yeah, we know about this for a long time." I was like, okay, thanks for sharing it." So, and we discovered that I want to read some of these out for you, which I found very interesting. Most women were told that masturbation is evil, which is very, very common. And I've heard this amongst my friend circle as well. And they were told that you know what, you cannot touch yourself. Again, it's a pretty common thing that you hear growing up. And what this is something I really like, that women masturbated everywhere, from auto rickshaws to train rides to boarding classes in colleges and school, and of course in several bathrooms everywhere. Yeah.
Auto
And
rickshaw?
this, yeah, apparently, and this one vivid story which is now burnt into my brain was that this girl was wearing a very tight pair of jeans, and the auto rickshaw was vibrating. So, you guys can add, yeah,
Clitoris stimulation.
exactly. Now we have a term, clitoris stimulation happened, and she was pretty happy, and she's like, ha ha ha, I had a very nice ride. I'm like, oh, cool story. It never happened to me. Yeah. And this is our favorite part, that the most common toy used was a Nokia vibrator phone. Yeah, And doesn't it make you think that it makes sense now? Doesn't it make you think you're like,
It
yeah,
does.
that phone really did vibrate like
It,
crazy.
mm,
Yeah. So, and it's easy to access, right? It's you can't order or buy a sex toy, but you can have a Nokia phone. So
yep.
Nokia should have gotten into this business way before. Yeah.
The
So
most popular selling vibrator of all time is called the Hitachi Magic Wand, which is sold as a massager. So
there, there you
Oh.
go. You can buy it easily. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Light bulb. So, Dr. Sania, as an expert, would you recommend toys and aids for women who are considering masturbating for the first time?
for the very first time, it can be helpful, but I feel like it's better to do it yourself and figure out what you like. Simply because there is a 20% minority that can have vaginal orgasms. So, you can always stimulate yourself using fingers. The other big problem with sex toys in India is they're really expensive. They're like
Mm.
ridiculously expensive. The cheapest vibrator I have seen in India was 3,500 rupees. That's not affordable for most people.
That's a lot.
Um, yeah, and the sale of sex toys is technically illegal in India.
Illegal. Yeah.
So, um, yeah, it comes with so many hassles, and if we kind of step away from the myths of the biggest, blackest dildo you can find is going to bring you to an orgasm. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. A lot of people orgasm from just squeezing their thighs together, and that makes clitoral stimulation. So, I would say just do it yourself, DIY it, and then if it doesn't work, you go to the craft shop.
Get yourself a toy. And what would be your recommendation to women who have been trying to pleasure themselves for years or have tried multiple times, but they just haven't achieved success and haven't got there?
So I'm not very sort of pro porn in that regard, but there's a lot of good ethically made porn available online that can help. Additionally, if you have a partner, communicating with that partner can be a very erotic experience in and of itself that can already bring you there. And then using masturbation or using toys. But I think again the crux of it all boils down to like the entire podcast can be this entire conversation can be summed up in one sentence: try clitoral stimulation. It's going to work. um Time and time again we've been told that funnily enough, like the entirety of the clitoris was mapped 15 years ago in 2015.
Hmm.
That is how far behind we are with clitoral research.
Whoa.
uh, Female genital mutilation happens in so many places where the clitoris is cut off. So there is an understanding that this plays some role in pleasure, but how deeply and how intricately it's linked with pleasure is not something we understand. So like there's a lot of people who do say that there's like I'm of this camp as well, that all orgasms are essentially clitoral in origin. So, what we as researchers, as scientists who study sex understand now is that there's three kind of orgasms. One is from the direct stimulation of the clitoris. The other is from the vagina, which means there is a indirect stimulation of the clitoris because, it kind of lies above the vaginal wall. And the third is something called the VUC complex? No, the CUV complex. The clitoral something vaginal complex. There's some CUV complex, which is also again indirect stimulation of the clitoris. What we think is the G spot.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people waste their time, looking for the G spot, which also was named after a man who apparently discovered it. Yeah. So, redundancy is redundant.
Got it.
This is where I think if we can kind of step away from the long held ideas we've had and just go for it. Essentially it's like a man stroking his balls to have an orgasm. It's not going to work. It may feel really good, but he's not going to have an orgasm until he strokes the penis. And the clitoris
Mm.
is the sort of female counterpart of the penis. What I call the penis is an overgrown clitoris. You know, if the right hormones are not there, it's not even like a very feminazi statement of mine. It's
Yeah.
literally that, based in science. If the right hormones are not there, if the right genes are not there, the clitoris doesn't grow into a penis. If those are not there, it will remain a clitoris. So, you know, if you give it some stimulus, it can become a penis, but otherwise, it's a clitoris essentially.
That
Oh, all right.
changes, yeah, my entire perception of so many things. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you talk about how your partner can actually be with you on this journey of pleasure, right? And is there also there's this other conversation that um if you masturbate too much, for women of course, never for men,
Mm.
if you masturbate too much, you can lose sensitivity down there, and it can be the only way you might achieve an orgasm, and then sexual pleasure takes a back seat. Is there any truth in that?
Say it with me. Clitoral stimulation. That's the difference, you know.
Yeah.
Once you're masturbating on your own, it's going to be clitoral stimulation. Once you're having
Yeah.
sex, it's going to be, you know, you're going to expect a vaginal orgasm. That's not going to happen for 80% of the people. And people are like, oh no, she's masturbated too much. She's lost all sensitivity. Um, Again, this is, I feel like I'm like a broken record that's hopping on and on again about the same thing. But there's a lot of shame and stigma around masturbation for all genders, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's things like it's going to make you blind, it's going to give you hairy palms. Cornflakes were invented to stop masturbation. It's just
Yeah.
weird. So essentially, in and of itself, masturbation is not a bad thing for whatever gender, as long as you know you're not overdoing it, and it's not going to make you lose sensitivity. It's not going to destroy your sexuality forever. If anything, it's going to be a supplement to it, because you do things on your own, you realize what you like. You can only fantasize about things on your own time. While actual sex is happening, it's very hard to fantasize about other things. So, you know, you find out your likes and dislikes, you find out what exactly gets you going, which is great, because you now come in with an instruction manual for your partner. How I like to say it is that if you and your partner decide to make an IKEA table together without a manual, it's not going to be fun. You probably will end up hitting each other or throwing a screw at the other person. Um, you come with a manual, the table becomes easy, you have fun doing it. You know, it's tricky, but you still have fun. And you can make that manual yourself by masturbating and finding out what you like. You know, there's that huge element of, firstly, you know, you're in your safe limits, you're doing it with yourself. Secondly, no STIs, yay. Um, and then let's build on the orgasms. So orgasms are good for your heart health. They make your skin glow. They release some very nice hormones, things like oxytocin, which is like it's like your partner hormone. You want to bond, you want to, and if you don't have a partner in that space, you want to bond with yourself and hug yourself. And what's better than self-love? Makes you sleepy. You know, it's like a little cardio event for your heart as well. So, like cardiovascular, not cardio as in, I meant cardiovascular
Yeah.
exercise,
Yeah.
not cardiovascular as in stroke. Um, so, yeah, overall, it's pretty good for health. The only places where I wouldn't recommend doing it, like medically, strictly speaking, from that perspective, if there's somebody who's pregnant, they can masturbate unless it's a high risk pregnancy, because the uterus and all the muscles basically go like this and they keep, you know, squeezing. So if it's a high risk pregnancy, you can initiate labor when you don't want to. So not a good idea to do it then. Another point when you don't want to do it is if you're feeling confused around how much you're masturbating. Now, this is separate from the shame that comes with masturbation for everybody. But, you know, some people do have a sense that, okay, this is too much and I'm, you know, taking time out of work to sit at home and fap. Or I'm not going to school, or I'm missing a social event so that I can jack off at home. The minute it starts interfering with your regular life, this is the point when you have to stop. And lastly, another point which is hilarious but also very practical is that sometimes people masturbate so much that they get chafing in their genitals. So, if your skin is literally raw and inflamed, you don't want to do it then. Otherwise, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Mainstream media and movies and Bollywood and TV plays a very big role in the general perception that the public has in about anything. I mean, and masturbation is no excuse from that either. In fact, if I remember this right, Swara Bhaskar's scene for masturbation in the movie that came out last year, Veere the Wedding. There was a lot of do you remember that scene? Are you aware of it? Tanaya?
So,
Dr. Tanaya. Right.
Tanya
That's
is
sort
fine.
of problem. Sorry?
Tanya is fine, chill.
So basically, there's a scene where she's portrayed as masturbating in the movie, and obviously, for her character, there was a lot of backlash which happened, and this whole thing about whether she should have done it, and cultural conversations about it, the Indian context about it, woman standard, what it would have been like. So that's one conversation, and the second conversation obviously is where in mainstream media we're perfectly all right accepting child marriages, we're accept perfectly all right accepting, let's say, going to the other extreme of this conversation, harassment on screen and rape on screen and all of those things. But the moment, we're just showing a woman just taking, um, she's just owning her own sexuality, that's where we draw the line and say, no, that's not all right. So, in terms of mainstream media and Indian cinema and content that we consume, what do you have to say?
I mean, one of the biggest hits of the 90s was a song that went along the lines of Kab tak रूठेगी चीखेगी चिल्लाएगी दिल कहता है एक दिन हसीना मान जाएगी.
तो मान जाएगी.
um yeah, and this is the kind of concepts we've grown up on, all Indian films. I'm sorry to be making this blanket statement, but I will say this for every single Indian film that is not from the outhouse world, that has come out, particularly South Indian cinema. My god, what happens in there? It's just stalking, coercion, until until she breaks down and gives in. There's a lot of push on taming free women,
Yeah.
and this is a very general sentiment, unfortunately, among the masses in India, that we will, in a very UP way of saying it, बहुत गर्मी चढ़ रही है अभी औकात में दिखाते हैं. This is how they say it in UP. And that's been thrown at me as well. So because empowered, confident woman who can go say anything on the internet, cool. Abhi औकात पे लाते हैं and all of that. Um, it's played so heavily into our minds that this is how we expect relationships to happen. Without the drama, without the chase. I was in a I was in a very abusive relationship when I was in the first year of college. So when I went to study, um, there was this boy who was after me, and it was very exciting because he used to chase after me. And when I said no to him, he smashed his head in the mirror, and he came to class next day with cuts on his head, and he's like, "I did this for Tanaya," and I was like, "Nice." And everybody was like, "Oh my god, you're so lucky, there's somebody doing this for you." And to a young 16, 17-year-old girl, I was like, wow, this guy really must love me. And I stayed with him for 2.5 years. And he, there was this physical abuse, there was verbal abuse, there was everything. And I had been told by everybody that I'm so lucky that somebody's doing all of this for me. That somebody is so relentlessly after capturing me. That and capturing is a very loaded word here, but that's essentially what it was. And that's how a lot of our ideas of romantic relationships have been shaped, and unfortunately that also spills over into the bedroom. You know Things like BDSM can be very fun for a couple to explore, but it only and only has to go with the woman being submissive and the man being dominating, because for a man to submit is emasculating. um the power dynamic is very tense in the bedroom that way. In most, I mean, I'm not a blanket statement here, but in most relationships that I've encountered. I also live in UP, so I have a very dystopian worldview. But I think this can be said about most of the country, unfortunately.
So we're going to do a very quick rapid fire, and this rapid fire is actually very biased because it's all very positive. So there's technically going to be no controversy. It's just to reiterate how
How disappointing.
yes, masturbation is amazing. Yes, you should be doing it, and how we all should feel happy and take care of ourselves. Okay. First question, Malaka, you can also say yes or no, okay, if you want. Yeah.
Oh, from my exciting history with masturbation, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you've read the rapid fire. It's like you should be like yes, yes, yes. Okay. First one, masturbation, good or evil?
Good.
Excellent.
Yes or no question. Are women bringing shame to their family and khandan by pleasuring themselves and touching themselves?
No.
Is it wrong to love it?
No.
Can you be too old or too young to masturbate? Yes or no?
Too young, yes. Too no.
Yeah, too old. No. Okay. And the last one, this is my favorite. Should we as women encourage our girlfriends to pleasure themselves and be happy and live happily ever after?
Yes. Yes. Shout it from the rooftop.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, nice. Sorry?
We need an echo effect here.
Yeah, yeah. Should be like like a crescendo building up. Okay, to wrap this up, Tanaya, we ask all of our guests this one question. So, how do you think we as Indians who are part of the global community of Indians can raise the bar for ourselves and by doing so raise the bar for those around us?
That's a loaded as fuck question. I'm going to talk strictly about sexual health because I
Yes.
don't have any experience with anything else in the entire world. Normalize conversations, like we had a really chill conversation about masturbation, sex toys, and clitoris and penis, and there was no awkward giggling. There was fun giggling. There was no awkward giggling because we didn't make it weird, because it felt like a normal thing to talk about. If we can talk about the elbow, we can talk about the vagina and the penis. So
Again, great analogy.
Yeah, like
You know what I'm learning? So in our season 2, we have a lot of experts on board, and so mental health, sexual health, and amongst many other things, life coaches and trainers. I've learned that they use the best analogies. Like, and all of them start off with okay, I'm gonna explain this to you with a story or with an analogy. I'm like, it's so much better to talk in analogies. Just hits home.
there's Richard Feynman's concept that if you can explain anything to a 5-year-old, you know it. So
That's right.
I try
That's
to
right.
talk in 5-year-old terms.
Yeah, I love it. Dr. Tanaya, it was awesome to have you. We are going to do this again, and hope you have an amazing week.
And you too, and thank you so much for having me. I had an absolute blast.
Super.
Hey there! Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Raise the Brow. Follow the podcast on Instagram and YouTube. And hey, slide into our DMs because we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to share the podcast or this very episode with anyone who you think needs this in their life.